This was a rookie move. I know better than to put dry soil into anything. Anything. Okay, hammer. Today's chore is to collect some of this old soil from garden rows that I no longer use and repurpose it as the last component of the new worm bedding. I know this soil is old because I haven't used vermiculite in years. I stopped using these rows for two reasons. First of all, the drought got so intense that I couldn't justify using water. And I got significant deer pressure here. My fence was only 6 feet tall and they hopped over it like it wasn't even there. And after the second year of everything being eaten down all the way to the ground, at the moment it was ready to bear, I just gave up. They can have it. I started gardening in a different way that accommodates the deer. I'll show some of that later. I'm sure there are other folks who are feeling deer pressure, and if it's a frustration for you, there's workarounds. We still have them here. Like, we put out apples and allow them to come and eat. With my different little method of gardening, I get to eat too. I'm masking up for this chore because farmer's lung is a real thing. All of this is going to be super dusty. What is so good for the garden is not so good for your lungs. This soil will be the last component. If you missed the video where I was gathering the components to put this bedding together, I'll link it at the end. At this point, I have the new bedding built up about as high as I'll go before I add the worms. Composting worms don't go very deep. So right now the bed's probably about 8 inches deep, or will be when I flip the screen full of worms on top of it. If I went deeper, the bedding would just lay there and I would have to pitchfork everything. But as it is, the composting worms will work it from the top and the wild worms will come in and work from the bottom. And that's awesome because they bring in the stardust. And since this is an open system, both species coexist. As it is, everybody seems happy. Because I allow the wild worms and the composting worms to mingle, I don't sell worms. Composting worms will probably die in the garden when it gets cold. And earthworms can't live in captivity. That's why I make such an effort to get everybody out before I sell the castings. I had worms living in this soil when it was a garden, So even though it dried out and the worms went away, I'm relatively certain that it's safe for them. But I still need to do a little bit of testing. It's a really good sign that this guy has made a home in this little piece of avocado peel. So I'm about to seed this bed with some chopped up apples just to see if any of the worms will come to the surface on their own. I should see signs of life within 2 days. And if there are worms here, it'll be time to flip the screens. These apples are not rotten. They got burned by the sun on one side just from laying on the ground. So I have to chop them up. If I just threw them in their peels, they would lay in there for weeks. But after chopping them up and throwing them in, they'll rot immediately. As we get later into the season, I'll get a surplus of fallen apples. And once they lay in a pile and rot, I don't have to do this chop part. I can just squeeze them with my hand to break the peels. It could be done on a very small scale in a container, I believe. Anyone with a little space in their yard, if I didn't have any worms in this at all, they would still come in from beneath. And in the end, there would still be worms in it. And if it was left long enough, eventually they would eat all of the food and the whole pile would be castings. The difference between compost and vermicompost is basically just where you stop in the process. I'll seed this whole thing. I'm going to seed the new bedding as a test to see if worms will come into it on their own. And I'll also reseed the migration area. I want to get as many worms as possible above that screen. As soon as I see signs of life in this bed, it's worm flip day. Woo! Slow down. I don't know about you, but this stuff makes me happy. The anticipation. I take the time to wet the bedding in the bed so that the entire space is moist. This section still needs another load of soil before it's ready to receive worms. I'm just trying to get ahead of the game here. center section, all of that is finished castings. This entire bed started full with bedding all the way across. And it took a few months, but it was processed down to about half. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. The worm flip is imminent. See ya.